the Pod Network Entertainment.
Who's ready for story time?
What's going on? This is Xavier Woods, aka Austin Creed.
Let me talk to you.
Hello, WWE Universe in the Philippines. This is Charlotte.
Hey everyone, this is Jeff Cobb.
I have to finish the story.
We are pretty deadly. Yes, boy. Yes, boy.
Run!
Bang! The sniper is shooting you down. This is TMDK's Robbie Eagles.
Hey, this is the Cosmic Cactus, Paul London.
Hello, my name is Ilya Dragunov, the Czar, the NXT champion, and you're listening to...
And you're listening to...
And you're listening...
And you are listening...
And you're listening
to the Wrestling Podcast.
The Wrestling Podcast.
The Wrestling Podcast.
The Wrestling Podcast.
To the Wrestling Podcast. Yeah.
All right, this is the bonus episode this week. It features all the topics that we could not have time for on the live stream. It's Ro, Chino, and Emil once more. If you're hearing this, welcome. We're doing this a lot more now. So let's start. First, this week on NXT, Dominic Mysterio won the championship, the North American Championship, back from Trick Williams, I guess only after a couple of days. So it's nangangamoy Christian winning the World Heavyweight Championship here. All right, Emil, you have feelings about the Judgment Day's Reign of Terror. So what do you have to say about this?
But first of all, I can't believe they pulled a Christian on my boy Trick Williams. Like, why would they do that? Like he's getting over. Trick is starting to get his rhythm going as a singles guy, and then they do this to him. I felt this even yesterday while also watching Raw. I feel like Judgment Day is getting stale already. And I thought they should have done the breakup 2 months ago when they were still hot. And this is kasi I've been watching Raw ever since, and it's been the same thing every week. Like a combination of Cody, Sammy, KO, or even Jey Uso will have a promo at the start of the show, and then the Judgment Day will come out and they're gonna challenge someone in the main event. And it's been the same thing. Parang I can see that they're trying to stretch this story out to Survivor Series, and have that big blow-off match, whatever. Maybe it's a War Games, maybe it's a Survivor Series, elimination tag. But I feel like it's been dragging na and wala nang masyadong bagong nangyayari. Like if you watch Judgment Day this or next week on Raw, pretty much gonna be the same thing as what you will see next week on the next week, and then the other next week. Parang nawala na yung character development that they were hinting at 2 months ago when they're hinting Finn and Damian breaking up. So parang in a way, them winning the tag team titles, yes, it united them, pero at the same time, they parang di naman sa wasted because it's still kind of happening now, pero they're trying to stretch this out longer than it needs to be. And if the Judgment Day is still a thing after Survivor Series, then yes, at that point they will jump the shark. Hindi pa naman sila to jump the shark at this point. I'm just saying na they're getting stale and they're not as hot as they were 2 months ago when I feel like they should have done the breakup storyline. Yun lang naman. Maybe my opinion will change in a week. Maybe my opinion will change come Survivor Series. But that's how I feel right now. It's been the same thing every week on Raw. It's been just like the same it's some sort of combination between the babyface and the Judgment Day. Ngayon lang nagbago kasi it's Gunther, and then that 1 week where Gunther was also the main event. But other than that, it's been the same mix in the main event of Raw lately. It's been the same formula, and dun ko na feel yung pagiging stale niya.
Gino, do you agree?
I do not agree. And here's why. I'll break it down for you, Emil. The reason they took the title away from Trick Williams was so that Trick had a chip on his shoulder going in to whatever he goes into in NXT. Remember before this matchup, in-offeran siya ni Melo ng opportunity to be on his side, right? He was like, these guys are tricky. I want to be on your side. And Trick denied him. So this gives Melo an opportunity to be like, I told you so. Diba? And perfectly leads into a Melo Trick matchup, which is essentially what's going to happen before Melo gets called up. That's where I see this going. It also allows them to pad Dominic Mysterio's numbers a little bit more. Diba? Para malevelan niya, if not overshadow his Judgment Day compatriots the moment they drop those tag team titles. Diba? Which is seeming more likely now kasi the fact that they are at risk of losing those titles adds another wrinkle into the Survivor Series matchup going in. So if you don't want to feel the story feel stale, feeling ko yan yung dapat mangyayari moving forward for the Judgment Day at least. They need to lose the titles, give them to Cody and Jay. I know I'm going back on my previous statement here. Pero if in like the grander scheme of things, ito na yung nakikita kong nangyayari pag connect mo yan diba? So, pag nawala na yung title sa Judgment Day, pupunta sa Survivor Series, mas magiging mas brutal yung Survivor Series matchup na yun. And with Trick Williams, he has the opportunity to essentially turn heel against Melo, who is charismatic and will not turn heel at this point.
God.
No way Trick is going to turn heel. Not with the crowd support.
Yeah, not with the crowd supporting him.
Yeah, I think it's the other way around. Melo who's going to turn heel.
On that note, tama si Emil. They did do the whole mid-credits thing nung No Mercy. And it was pretty clear that Melo was the one foreshadowing his turn. Okay. If you saw him steal a quick look at the North American Championship dun sa shoulder knee trick. So on that note, Emil is right. On the other note, though, Emil is also wrong in how he sees it. In addition to what Chino said, remember that Trick really lucked into the whole championship thing. In the real world, he lucked into it because in the fire si Mustafa Ali, and then in kayfabe, first he really lucked into the championship match after he fell into the pin nung four-way, right? And then he lucked into the championship win because Dom's cheating backfired on him. So it was booked for him to not look as good as he could be. So that was a bigger problem I had with Trick, not the Judgment Day thing. Because when it all comes down to it, the whole Judgment Day thing was a last minute change that they just wanted to do to further whatever story Trick and Melo had or is going to have. So I don't mind that. You're all kind of right then as well when you say that it's the same thing every week. We have to remember, though, that this whole thing was enabled when the crowd really started liking Judgment Day. Yeah. So because of Rhea, because of Dom, it's really nice to boo him. That's why they're so over his heel. So if they didn't react to the Judgment Day like that, then we wouldn't have this Judgment Day reign of terror as well. So I'm not saying I'm blaming everyone, but this is how the business works. If you get over like that the way you're supposed to, then you're naturally gonna keep getting the time and exposure that some people may not have asked for. Emil's right though that there could be more creative ways to keep the story going from week to week. I think that's the bigger problem than with WWE in general. That's why I guess people are tired of watching the long story play out, which is both valid and invalid in my opinion, pero it is what it is. So you're saying, Emil, that you don't like the long-term storytelling happening right now.
I do like the long-term story. I do like long-term storytelling, pero the way it is going right now, parang it's like naka-flatline. Walang development, walang new walang bagong nangyayari. Ganun.
Yeah.
Ganun yun. Pero
yes.
eventually it will happen. I do think at some point. Pero right now they're coasting. I feel like they're coasting. And they're biding, parang, ini-stretch nila to go to a certain point where they can pull off that thing. Pero like as a weekly viewer of the weekly shows, it can
Right.
get stale. It can get tiring. Diba?
Siguro, sorry, Chino, you were gonna say?
I think the bigger focus here, while the Judgment Day is important, we also have to understand that Nexus event Jay Uso, that's my new nickname for him now, is also part of the storyline. So I think the bigger focus is on the Jay Uro's quote unquote hero arc in the main roster. Kaya siguro, kaya siguro hindi natututukan masyado tong Judgment Day storyline. A lot of these storylines is these sort of B-plot storylines tend to coast when you have an A player as part of the mix.
Yeah.
Diba? So,
That's also
naapektuhan talaga yun in the long run. And not everything can be Shakespeare, or unfortunately. Sometimes a subplot is exactly just that. It's a subplot. So, unfortunately, while the Judgment Day are big deals, napasukan sila ng mas bigger deal and main event Jey Uso. And that's just how the world shakes out.
So what I'm going to say is, if the Judgment Day needs to do something else, I do think they need to focus on the whole JD McDonough. The JD McDonough plot. So the subplot. So I think they should get going with, either accepting him in the group or just, cutting ties with him completely. So I think that's what they are holding back on.
Kasi diba, kasi diba last year, I'm gonna compare it to the Bloodline story. It was we were getting the same complaints that it's getting stale. Not until the time where they added Sammy to the mix and they really played on that story of whether he's not with the Bloodline, whether he's not with the Bloodline, and parang dun na excite ulit yung mga tao sa story. And I wish Judgment Day could have that. Not the exact same thing, pero that exact same, plot that would make things interesting again.
Okay. Yeah. Sige. I think we can leave it at that. Next, more NXT things after we had that NXT discussion earlier. So we talked about John Cena and Paul Heyman. So the reason why they're coming down to NXT is because we have a Braun Breaker versus Carmelo Hayes rematch. And Paul Heyman is going to be crowning Braun Breaker as the new Paul Heyman guy for a night. And then John Cena is inexplicably backing Carmelo Hayes. So what do you guys think about this? And what do you guys think of this particular story in this detour from whatever Melo has going on and Braun has going on?
I think this is interesting then, kasi we haven't seen Braun and Melo face off in a while. Not since the championship matches nung June or May or April or to June of this year. And it's now a different dynamic because Melo is having this struggle, of losing the NXT title and his problems with that Trick, and then Braun here in a way kind of sympathizing Melo for the things that he's going through, and it's a nice one-off. I'm not banking on this to extend until after next week. So it's going to be a nice one-off. Two of the biggest stars in NXT go up against one another alongside, probably the biggest star of this generation in John Cena and Paul, and one of the best managers of all time, Paul Heyman. So it's I think it's a nice one-off. Yun lang yun. It's going to be a nice one-off for the ratings, I guess, and to pop the crowd as well. So.
Gino, do you think that they did this in a smooth way?
Not at all. So random. It's still so random to me. I think the bigger question here, though, is going to be how this affects the Fastlane matchup. Diba? Kasi it's essentially still John Cena versus the Bloodline. Diba? With Paul Heyman being there. So, ang feeling ko lang dito is it might affect the outcome of the Fastlane matchup with LA Knight and the Usos. Kasi they're going to tease it definitely, but it's also going to have a bigger long-term story effect with in terms of John Cena and whatever he has to do with the Bloodline.
Yeah, I think it's weird. Mas para lang masabi na may big stars tayo. But I'm more compelled by the angle where, as Emil said, Carmelo is struggling with his conscience and his personality. That's a really more interesting character study, and I think it's way more interesting than what Carmelo has done over the past few months since winning the NXT Championship. So I want to see where that plays. Obviously, we know it's going to it's going to a point where Melo turns on Trick. So I want to see how they get to point B. Right. Speaking of NXT pa rin, Becky Lynch is continuing her tour of giving the young women a rub. This week it was Tegan Knox. Next week it's going to be Indy Hartwell on NXT Title Tuesday. So the question is this going to be an extended thing? Tiff Stratton didn't get to win the championship back as we predicted in a no DQ match. So what does it take, or how long do you think Becky Lynch is going to keep the NXT Women's Championship?
I feel like the biggest factor at play here is her family, is their young daughter. Malaking bagay na yung NXT is in Florida where they currently reside. So it might be a while for Becky. We might see Becky Lynch hold the title for a while. That said, it's also a perfect opportunity to try and do something with Tiffany Stratton that they've never done before that might actually work or not work, and that's to turn her face. Make her chase after that Becky Lynch title as a face. See if she's compelling enough to work as a face. And then if anything, kung gumana yon, it gives her more credibility moving up to the main roster. If not, they have to go back to the drawing board, see ways to make her likable. Kasi, di ba dapat versatile ka pag umakyat ka sa main roster eh. You can be cast as a heel or as a face, and it can either go both ways. So while they have this time with Becky Lynch, I think that's the trajectory they might or should take with Tiffany Stratton.
All right, Emil?
I know we said last week or 2 weeks ago na she is suited to debut on the main roster. Pero what if lang naman, no? If Jade Cargill can come in and be the one to beat Becky for the NXT Women's Championship. That's going to be a big win. Like, your first title, when you first win against Becky Lynch for the NXT title, that's a big stamp of approval for your debut, diba? So why not? And maybe, just win the title and then you're off the main roster. I don't know. Maybe just have a cup of coffee there in NXT just for more seasoning, I guess. And then ship her off to the main roster, maybe for after Mania or something. Pero I would like that. I would honestly like that. Because from the current crop of rosters, aside from Tiffany, I really don't see anyone dethroning Becky anytime soon. So it's either Tiffany, like Chino said, or debut Jade Cargill in NXT. That's what I'm thinking.
Jade Cargill is rumored, but not confirmed, to be going to Raw. So, yun yung ano, as I predicted. Anyway, Becky Lynch being on NXT and having an extended stay is pretty good. I think she's been paso na rin sa Raw or SmackDown. So, it's a nice thing to use her in a place where she didn't really get a big rub with the championship. So it's funny because it was all about Charlotte, it was all about Bayley and Sasha, and then they kind of overlooked Becky, and now she's back as the biggest deal on NXT. So okay din to, she's giving the chance to the women on the main roster who were called up but are not used as much because there were other people who needed more the bigger TV time. So you got Tegan Knox, and you have Indy Hartwell. So a lot of these things, a lot of these people who get a second chance at, potential breakout stardom if they do well. But if they don't, it's still fine because they get to be on TV once more. So looking forward to what else is in store. I don't know if I want, now at this point, I don't know if I want Becky to drop the championship anytime soon. So let's enjoy this while it lasts, or while it's still fun. Right. Before we move on to AEW, one last thing about NXT, technically about NXT. So Dragon Lee has a match against Austin Theory, I believe, this week on SmackDown. And with 2 matches on the main roster now, I think he's pretty much soft launched on the main roster. What do you guys think? Is it time for him to get? Is this him getting called up?
Oh yeah, definitely. Ito na yun eh. Kasi, like, I think we said this on the Pick of the Week episode na when Dragon, I think someone said na they were surprised when Dragon Lee debuted in NXT. I think it was Chino, because he's been all over the world before he came to WWE, and he has experience in Japan, in AEW, in Mexico. So talagang I think primed na talaga siya sa main roster, and maybe he just need to have a cup of coffee sa down there in NXT. But in terms of being ready, he's more than ready at this point.
Gina.
I think at this point, the lines between what the main roster person is and what an NXT person
That's a good point.
is,
Yeah, it's a good point.
is pretty ambiguous. Like, it's all, wala na, labo-labo na yan. Yeah, we were just talking about Becky Lynch. So ano siya, na downgrade ba siya? Because she's an NXT champion now? Like, diba, parang hindi na, I think it doesn't matter at this point, except unless you do the Raw and SmackDown division. Yun lang yung distinct arbitrary rule na fina-follow nila ngayon. Pag Raw ka, pag SmackDown ka, pero everything else goes. Pwede ka mag-NXT, pwede kang umakyat from NXT. It's really weird, man, but wrestling is weird, and that's why we love it.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I feel like this is the 2023 version of, people appearing on Raw and SmackDown, which is a thing that still happens, but now it's people appearing between the main roster and NXT. On that note, though, I do think because they're more comfortable booking Dragon Lee on the main shows, I think ito na yun eh. Obviously, there's still a chance that he goes back to NXT or appears on both brands. But if you appear on the main shows, you're pretty much de facto main roster guy. So I think this is it. And I think deserving naman, yeah. We've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks, and we did say that he has passed the audition. People love him. He is able to work really well in front of the main roster crowd, which is not really that much different from, say, NJPW in Japan or Ring of Honor, diba? So that's pretty good of him to be really comfortable with those kinds of crowds. So yun, the one last thing before we go, AEW, Chino brought this up in our chat. So he saw this clip of MJF during the post WrestleDream media scrum. Somebody asked him about the kind of match that he had on the show, which was versus the Righteous, which was a little bit different from the usual AEW style match. And then he said that he was bringing, quote unquote, a different kind of flavor of ice cream, metaphorically, syempre, to wrestling and specifically to AEW. So, Chino, what do you think of this statement by MJF?
I think, first of all, MJF is a very intelligent human being. When the way he answers all these questions as a heel and as a face are both very distinct. Diba? Kung heel siya, tapos sinagot niya itong question na to, mumurahin lang niya yung tao, call him a mark and all that, diba? But as a face now, the way he was able to answer this question so precisely and so distinctly just made me applaud him. Kasi it just goes to show the kind of mind he has for the business here. But as a whole, I also think that he has a point. Diba? That there are matches out there where guys do all sorts of things to go over and they get popped for it, pero at the same time put their bodies at risk. Si MJF, while he was called gimmicky, also understands that it's also about putting on a show. Diba? You don't necessarily have to do as many flips or as many spots, quote unquote, to go over. You can also just do other things like he did in this matchup to win and to essentially, sabi niya, he wanted a body slam to have the same gravitas as whatever people consider a good 5-star match. And I think tama siya in that regard, because wrestling is a wide spectrum, diba? Not one thing is actually just wrestling, diba? Hindi porket hindi ka na pakamatay, hindi ka na magaling, and at the same time, hindi porket the gimmick match ka, hindi ka na siseryosohin. We're talking about the AEW heavyweight champion here, diba? So dapat siniseryoso talaga siya. And I definitely understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I have quite a bit to say about that. But before that, Emil, what do you think of what MJF said about wrestling?
I kind of agree with what he said. Na bringing different flavors to wrestling is always good for the for not just for the company but for the business in the entirety. Because in wrestling, then it's kind of like in a sports team. Na every player on a team has a specific role to play. They have a specific specialty that they brought into the table. Same with wrestling. If everyone does the same style, everyone does the same type of wrestling, mauumay ka. But if you have different guys doing different stuff, it parang may variety. Like if you like lucha, then there's guys for you to watch to satisfy your lucha cravings. If you want a big meaty man slapping meat, there's guys for you to watch. And if you want a main event caliber like championship match, you also have a set of guys to do that, to do those things. So I agree. Now, bringing different flavors to wrestling is only good. It's only good for the company and for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, to Chino's point, when he said that MJF was really smart, he really is smart. He really does know his stuff. Like he really understands wrestling in a way that a lot of fans will not. To be honest, he just hides it because when he's a heel, he's committed to being a dick, diba? And he's committed to shouting at everyone and everything and being snarky. So you don't really get a sense of how smart or intelligent he is until he turned face. So that's pretty cool of him. I agree. The match was different versus the Righteous, and it was if you watch the whole thing, including the rest of the matches on the show, talagang ibang-iba siya. It's slower, it's more WWE style, as it were. If you are cognizant of these different house styles, definitely a lot more sports entertainment. And if you read my free WrestleDream review, you would see that I kind of tuned out in a lot of the quote unquote work rate matches. So yung mga Japanese influence matches, like of the Kenny Omegas and the Young Bucks of the world, they're not bad per se. It's just that they have become a little more homogenized to the point now. Okay, I can kind of tune out because everything is on the same level when it comes to yung dynamism niya and how big each spot is, because everyone is just going at full speed, diba? When you compare it to matches like MJF versus the Righteous or Christian Cage versus Darby Allin or ZSJ versus Bryan Danielson, which slowed things down a little bit, you really get to appreciate this a lot more. And that's the kind of flavor that MJF was talking about when he said that he was bringing something else, something different to AEW. And it really is sometimes, I think, taken for granted. But syempre, the crowds really love it. Like, they were able to get on board behind Darby Allin or get on board behind CSJ and Bryan Danielson. And syempre, obviously get on board behind MJF. So it's really good. And if you are the type of fan who doesn't like it, it's not wrong, pero sayang din because I think you're missing out. But also, I feel that these are the kind of things that you also grow into as a fan the more you watch wrestling and the more you get older. Yeah. You guys have anything else to say about this particular statement?
Yeah, good. I'm good at these. So. I don't cheat.
All right. So that is it for our bonus audio only episode this week. We'll see you next week for our usual picks of the week and maybe, some more reactions if something big happens over the weekend. So catch you then on Tuesday when you hear picks of the week. All right. Till then, it's Ro, Chino, and Emil for this special bonus audio-only episode of the Wrestling Podcast. Wrestling Podcast out. Peace.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.